But I always feel a little bit of hypocrisy standing in front of groups like this, because I certainly do not have my life figured out. The things I talk about are things I continually strive for and work towards. And I'm a work in process, like all of us, I think. We're all on a continuum. All of us have great strengths, and we also have weaknesses. And the older I get, the more I understand that people, for the most part, are just doing the best they can. And that's where I am. And my mom is in the audience. She referenced earlier, she's somewhere right here. And she was just a great role model for me, and I'm real grateful for her. So I'm blind, right? You see the cane, gives it away. I'm gonna talk a little bit today about some of the experience I've had going blind, and what that's meant to me in my ability to raise a family, my professional career, and my life in general. I have a great life. I'm happy and I'm blessed, and I think life is a beautiful, abundant place to be. And part of that is learning to deal with some of the fears and anxieties that we have pop up in our life, and making sure that those don't dominate how we live. I mean, we all have them, right? We all have some part of ourselves that we feel insecure about. We're not sure if we're good enough. We've got fear. What if we can't do it? What if we're not going to make it? Those things can really distract us from the ability to engage and live a fully abundant life. Now, the things that, like I said, I'm going to talk about are lessons I've learned, and I continue to learn them as I get older and refine them. So I'm going to talk about, depending on time, 6 to 7 things. But let me talk with the first one. It's this idea. It's very simple. But I'll tell you what the concept is after I tell you the story. So I started going blind when I was 11. It was progressive. I lost a lot of vision on my mission. And then later, when I was back in Maryland with my husband and son, at the time we had one son, and I had a lot of shame about carrying a cane around. Why would that be? Because when you carry a cane around, you cannot be inconspicuous, right? You cannot be stealth and sneak. I mean, people see you, they notice you. Blindness had a lot of negative stereotypes for me around helplessness, vulnerability. Some of the people I knew at the time who were blind were focused on Social Security. I did not want a life like that. I had a lot of fear around that. And I saw myself as visually impaired. That is such nonsense. I was fooling myself. I was going blind. And that's not a reality I wanted to fully accept, and the consequences of going blind. So I did a lot to avoid that. And so what I would do, I had this sneaky little trick. At the time, as I lost more and more vision, I knew I needed help. At the time, I was using what I call radar foot, trying to put my foot out to feel the stair in front of me to figure out where it was. That wasn't always very successful. So I started using a portable cane. This is a straight cane. It's long, it's hard, and I can walk fast with it. But I have a portable cane. I travel with it now in case this one breaks when I'm traveling. But it goes up. You just pop it, and it goes about this big. So I would keep that in my little backpack, and then if I got to stairs, I'd pull it out and then use my cane to go down the stairs and put it back in. Can you imagine what people watching me must have thought? Like, crazy blind woman, are you blind or are you not blind? Make up your mind. So I'd sneak it in there like I was fooling someone. And I was doing that. So one day I was coming home, I had been at the gym, and I was walking back home, and just minding my business. I walked this path that I had always walked a million times, and apparently, unbeknownst to me, I'd walked into an entire construction site. And if I had been using my cane, probably people would have alerted me, or I would have picked up with my cane that the environment and the terrain was different. But I kept on my way, and all of a sudden, what do you think I fell into? A manhole. Fell right down into a manhole. Now, the good news is that it was winter, so it was filled with freezing cold water to break my fall. The bad news is that it was filled with freezing cold water to break my fall. It was the coldest I've ever been in my life. And I fell right into it. And I got out of that, called my husband to come pick me up. I was humiliated, I was embarrassed, I was freezing cold. And I had a really big wake-up call that day. I had been living a lot of my life in avoiding who I was. I didn't want the stereotypes. I didn't want people to stare at me. I didn't want to face the reality of who I was becoming as a blind person. I had done a lot to camouflage that. And in doing so, I had abdicated the best part of who I was, which was me. And I had hid it and covered it up, trying to conform with what I thought everybody's expectations for me were, right? I mean, to be blind is to be very different. And sometimes in a culture where we're supposed to be perfect and look a certain way and be a certain way. To be different was hard. There's a great quote I once heard: "We're all born originals but die copies." I do not think we were put on this planet to all be the same. I fundamentally believe in the concepts of a body of Christ, where the fingers and the hands and the eyes and the feet all play an important role in making a whole body. I had to come to grips that I wasn't like all of you. I was unique and different, and that was okay. And so I decided at that point to start to face what I needed to do and learn to be successful as a blind person. Now, to that point, I had done a mission. I graduated from school. I had just gotten a job, but I was struggling. I was struggling to keep on top of stuff because how I had to interface with reality was really different. And I had to make a choice that I could live life on my own terms, or I could live by all the expectations I thought that everybody else around had for me. It was a turning point. There's a great quote. There's a book by Ralph Waldo Emerson called Self-Reliance that I love. And he says, "It is a great man who, in the midst of the crowd, can keep with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude." Who are you? Why are you different and unique? You're here for a unique reason and purpose. You bring something to the table that nobody else can bring. In my discussions on Capitol Hill or with the governor or with legislators, I've come to find my voice is important. It may be different. I may bring a unique perspective to the table, just like everybody else does, and everybody's voices are equally important and valid and necessary to come to great solutions. I've come to treasure and appreciate my uniqueness rather than be ashamed or concerned about it. And I'm sure each of us today, we still struggle with parts of ourselves that we don't think live up to what we think they should be. They don't meet social stereotypes of what we should look like or be like or sound like. But my hope for all of us is that we can learn to embrace those unique parts of ourselves and understand the contributions they can be. So that's the first concept, is to learn to be yourself. That's a lifelong journey. We change. Who I am today is different who I was 20 years ago. But don't hide from it. Learn to uncover it, reveal it, embrace it, and understand how that uniqueness can benefit you and those around you. So second lesson. So I decided I'm going to go in and really start to deal with all this stuff in my life. And I had the opportunity to go to a very intensive training for blind people. It's a boot camp for the blind. It was 4 months, residential. Some people go for 6 months to a year. And the whole entire time you wear sleep shades. I do have a little peripheral vision in my left eye, so I can see some movement in light and dark. And the training's there to help beat out of you any bad perceptions you have about blindness. So during the training, you learn how to build furniture with power saws. You have to learn how to barbecue. You have to learn to travel, orientation, mobility, wherever you need to go. And one of the things to graduate is they put you in a van with blindfolds on, and they have music going, and they drive you around, and they drop you off someplace, you don't know where, and you have to get back to where you started, and you can only ask one question along the way. The question is, could you be parachuted into China and find your way back home, essentially, is the goal. To get ready for that, every day we would practice orientation and mobility skills. I would go out with an instructor. They would teach me skills and principles like we learn here in the church, teach good principles and let them govern themselves. I would learn the principle and then go out and practice it. They would stand back to let me, figure it out for myself and make sure I wasn't getting in too much trouble. One day I was at a park that was across from the training center. And it was a park that was a mess. If any of you have been to the airport in Minnesota, it's kind of like that. It's a crisscross of paths, and it was impossible to find my way out of. And I've been walking and kept getting stuck. And I finally just got so frustrated and so overwhelmed with the experience that I just stopped. I stopped walking. I stopped making progress because I didn't know how to get out. My instructor at the time, Tony Cobb, who I will always be grateful for, came up from behind me, and he made a very important observation and comment. He said, "Kristen, you need to learn to walk through your confusion and your fear. You've got to learn to walk through your uncertainty." It was so impactful for me. He went on to say, "Kristen, you're not going to get any more information by standing still." And essentially what he was telling me, it's walking into the unknown where we gain new information and new knowledge. Sometimes we want to play it safe. We go into new careers, new endeavors, new friends, new home situations. All of you are figuring out what career to be in, what your jobs are going to be, who your friends, do you marry, not marry? A lot of unknowns in our lives. The ability to walk through our uncertainty and our fear is key to a successful life. I remember the important times of Peter in Matthew chapter 14, verses 21 through 31, one of my favorite stories. He's in the boat. Christ comes down, fourth watch, a big storm. We've got 12 apostles in the boat, big storm. They see Christ come out. Is it a ghost? No, not a ghost. It's Christ. Christ says, come out. Peter has the courage to get out of the boat. Yes, he falls. But you know what Peter did that none of the other apostles did? He walked on water. Even if it was only for 2 steps or 3 steps, he walked on water. He learned more about himself that day through walking on water and falling than any of those other apostles did. Do we have the courage to move out of our boats, to walk through uncertainty, to take a step in the unknown, and have the courage and faith to know that this journey is about learning and growing? Sometimes we'll fail, sometimes we'll learn difficult lessons, but that's the purpose. And we can start developing a comfort level with that, to walk into the unknown. Then we can solve problems that seem unsolvable. We can take on big challenges that seem impossible to surmount. We can try new things without fear that, what if I fail? So what? You get wet. You dry off. So lesson number 2, move out of your boat, learn to walk through your fear and your uncertainty. It's a lesson I continue to learn as we deal with big issues in the state about growth or water consumption or infrastructure, education for the state. Big problems that we don't all have the answers to, but I have the confidence if we work hard, the next step that we need to take will be revealed as we work hard. Okay, that was the second lesson. The third lesson is this idea of redefining what we perceive as a weakness. I talked earlier about the idea that we all think we have weaknesses or challenges. We all have insecurities. Sometimes, though, I'm concerned that the characteristics that we have are simply just characteristics, and we are wrong in our assumptions to think that they are a weakness. Remember in Ether 12:27, he talks about bring forth your weakness, I'll make it a strength. I've always wondered about that. Is it that God suddenly takes your blindness and makes it go away? Does he take that thing of yours that you think is a weakness and a bad trait and change it? Or do we learn to redefine it? A young boy named Tony once, who was a blind child at the age of 7, a good mentor of mine, Dr. Schroeder, was working with Tony. Tony was trying to learn to be an independent blind child, and like any child, he wanted to learn to play tag, to play along with his peers, like any kid. I have a son who's 11, our youngest right now. That's what boys do. They chase each other. He wanted to do it with all of his friends. Dr. Schroeder, who is one of the most competent blind people I ever have known, had high expectations for people, was trying to figure out how could he help Tony play tag. He went home that night to think about it, and to his chagrin, Dr. Schroeder realized that this is maybe one sport Tony would have to sit out. This is one thing he couldn't do. He went back to talk to Tony the next day. Luckily, Tony spoke before Dr. Schroeder did, and he said, Dr. Schroeder, he called him Fred, I figured it out. I know how to do this. He'd taken jars and filled them with rocks and given each of his friends a jar of rocks. And he let his, they agreed upon the boundaries of where they would run, and his friends would run with the jars so he could hear where they were. Simple, low-tech solution to the problem. Tony hadn't bought into the idea yet that blindness was a weakness or a problem. He hadn't been brainwashed into that it's a tragedy or the end of your life. He had redefined, more importantly, he hadn't defined yet what blindness meant. Blindness, like anything else I have, is a characteristic. I'm blonde, I'm 5'5", I'm not going to share my weight with you. I like chocolate. There's certain characteristics of me. Sometimes we set up our characteristics out of the gate as a weakness. When I tend to think if we could learn to redefine them and use them as a strength, they actually could be. You think of Tony. Tony became a creative problem solver. He didn't ask if the thing could be done. Rather, he asked how, because he assumed it was possible. Sometimes in our lives we have a lot of rules. If I were thinner or taller or smarter or richer, if I had a boyfriend, if I had a husband, if I had a girlfriend, if I had a wife, if I had this job, if I had more money, if I had this house, blah, 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 then I would be happy. Then I'd have what I want. If this part of me would change, then I would be okay. I don't think that's how this world works. I think we've been given a unique set of characteristics, and the question is, can you define your characteristics in a way that are an advantage to you? When you look at the Zoramites in the book of Alma who were held captive and they prayed for relief, God didn't relieve their burden. He just made them stronger to carry it. Redefine those parts of yourself that you're hard on yourself about, you think are wrong and should change. Figure out what advantages do those bring to you. Could blindness ever be an advantage, do you think? Absolutely. I don't care what people look like. You guys are all beautiful and handsome to me, right? I don't care about PowerPoint presentations, right? I don't care about them. I don't get messed up in all the audio-visual stuff with PowerPoint problems. I mean, there's advantages. Are there disadvantages? Sure, but the question is, how do you choose to define yourself? I assert that most of those things about yourself that you think are weak actually could be strengths, if you can redefine them. At least not the disadvantages you think they are. One time when I was running for lieutenant governor with Governor Ehrlich, he was the governor of Maryland at the time, there had been significant flooding, and he was in a helicopter flying over looking at the floods. And he got down, and one of the reporters said, what did you think of the floods? And he answered, he said, but Governor Ehrlich, your lieutenant governor candidate is blind. How would she have ever done this and assessed the floods? He said something so insightful. He said, there are many ways to get information other than your eyes. He understood that blindness was simply a characteristic that I needed to work around. So figure out what you're pulling yourself down about, so hard about yourself on. See how you can redefine that. That's the third lesson. Another big lesson for me has been this idea of self-advocacy. And it was a hard one for me. And what I mean by that is when you're blind, you sometimes need help. And when you feel like you're the recipient of services or charitable service, even with the best intention, it's sometimes a hard position to always be in. How do you ask for help from somebody and you know you're inconveniencing them, but also dictate how you want that help to be delivered, right? Remember in high school when I was starting to lose vision, I was using magnifying glasses, and I finally got this big TV screen to try to magnify stuff, and it was just a nightmare. And my mom was great, and we were trying to problem solve how I could access material. And it got so difficult to read that we said, well, why don't we hire a friend of mine? And she was super well-intended, and she could read to me. And I remember her reading to me, and her reading to me what she thought I needed to hear. And I was so grateful for the help. How was I going to push back and say, could you reread that? No, could you skip that paragraph? Could you read that faster? I don't need that information. I need this information. How could I take control of my life when somebody was helping me? The idea of self-advocacy sometimes is a hard one because in the church we're taught to be mild and meek and to serve and to be peacemakers. But I will also submit we're also asked to be bold and truth tellers. We're also asked to make a difference and to have an impact. And that requires that those unique skills that we have, that we're able to use those. Part of self-advocacy I've seen so well in the scriptures when you study the life of Christ. He would, after serving a multitude, leave the crowds to pray by himself. He would stand up to the Sadducees and Pharisees and draw a line on the sand of what was right or what was wrong. He would give statements to his apostles about what was appropriate or not appropriate. He was bold and meek. I had to learn that combination as I've gotten older about it's okay to ask for what you need. And it's not a selfish thing if it's done with the right heart, which is what are my unique gifts and talents, and how can I best bring them forward? And what help do I need to bring those forward? And it's okay to ask. Now, in my situation for being blind, that's sometimes different, right? I need help getting transportation or rides to work or whatever. My son this morning, do I have my black shoes on or my ruby shoes on because they feel the same and I needed to make sure. So stuff like that I need to check. And I'm glad he can tell colors now. But it wasn't very helpful when he was 2. So those things I ask help for. But my assumption and my guess is that a lot of you, maybe not in blind ways, feel like there's things you need in your life, if it's in relationships or if it's in friendships or from your instructors at school or what you need to be successful. And sometimes we feel uncomfortable having what's been coined crucial conversations because we're not sure if we're worth it. We're not sure if our contribution is worthy of somebody's assistance. And I encourage you today to challenge that assumption that your contribution is in fact not just important, but necessary for this world to be a better place. And that you advocating that your needs are met in a responsible, respectful, generous way is an appropriate way for you to be able to have your voice be heard. A couple more issues, things like life lessons learned. So we do need help. And I used to see that as a weakness. That somehow I was stronger if I could just do it all on my own and be self-sufficient. And one thing I love about our religion is free agency and self-sufficiency. We talk it, we preach it, we live it, and I love it. And we also need each other. So it was mentioned earlier that I did do the Rim to Rim Grand Canyon. It's about 26 miles in one day. It was a pretty intense hike, about a 5,000-foot change in elevation. And to do that, I needed help. So what we did, some of the folks that I hike with, Don in particular, who's just such a good man, he's serving an LDS mission now with his wife in Hawaii, he would put a bear bell on the back of his backpack. So as he walked, I could follow him and keep track of where he was on the trail. When trails got very narrow and I was tired or it was a little more sketchy, he would put we took a hiking stick and tied it to the back of his backpack so I could actually grab onto it, so I could perfectly center myself against his backpack, so I knew I was centered on the trail, just so I felt a little more grounded while hiking. I needed help on that. Likewise, as we were towards the end of the trail, we had some people who were really struggling physically, and we as a team stood back to encourage them and walk with them step by step so we knew everyone on our team made it to the top. It was a great experience for me, and I know in my career right now, I've had some amazing opportunities, and so many of those opportunities have come because I've had an amazing team surrounding me. People who I love and respect and admire, and they debate me, and they encourage me, and they challenge me. And my team is the huge success. I mean, any success I've had as a team, with my home, with my kids, with my family, with work, it's all team. It seems like such an obvious concept, but the older I've gotten, I am so clear that all of our success in life, we need each other. So part of it is advocating for yourself and knowing it's okay to ask for help and you're worthy of it. And two, being okay to assist others when they need it. Because at some point on the trail, you're going to need the bear bell. So make sure you're willing to give it to somebody else when you've got it. Final point for today. Actually, 0.5. I have a point and then a half a point. Okay, so I have 1.5 points. The final point I want to leave is this idea of chunking it. We have so many opportunities in this life, abundant opportunities. My challenge is prioritizing. You can talk to my mom. I mean, I want to do everything. I want to be a forest ranger. It's endless. There's so many things to do in this life. But when we go to do things that really matter, like you guys finishing school right now, whatever those things are you're tackling in your life, they can seem a little overwhelming. I just came from a 3-hour meeting up on Capitol Hill where we're talking about, the future of Utah over the next 40 years as we look at doubling our population. How are we going to manage that growth and economic prosperity? Big challenges, a little overwhelming almost. I've learned something really important in my life that helps us take this step into those areas that seem so difficult. So I travel a lot, and I travel by myself. Very often, not all the time, but very often it's not uncommon for me to travel by myself. And it used to be really scary before I had all my travel training, the idea of traveling by myself. In fact, not too long ago, I flew to Japan by myself and was a little nervous because as long as I can communicate with somebody and ask questions, I can figure it out. I'm like, what if they don't speak English? And I have to chunk things. So this is what I do when I travel. My first goal is just to find the gate. I have a goal. I know where I'm going. My goal, this month I'm traveling to Washington, D.C., taking my son with me. I know the goal. We're going to go to Washington, D.C. All right. But if I had to know all the details of how I was going to get that figured out before I left my house, I almost wouldn't go. Because generally speaking, as a blind person, there's a lot of unforeseen stuff you can't plan for, you don't know about, you've just got to figure it out as you go. So my first goal when I get to the airport is just to find the gate. Not a big deal, pretty simple. Next goal, I just find my seat. Not a big deal, that's the easiest part. The biggest thing is that the plane safely lands. Okay, I can't control that. But the plane safely lands. My next goal is I just got to find baggage claim, because if I can find baggage claim, usually I do carry on, but I know where baggage claim is. That's normally where the exit is, so then I can find taxis if I need a taxi. So then I find the taxi stand, and I ask questions along the way. I listen for cues. There's lots of contextual cues, and I ask lots of questions. I find the taxi, no big deal. I give them the address. I get to the hotel. I got to get in, I listen to where I think the front desk is or the concierge, which I find that. I check in, and then I got to figure out how to get to my room, which normally I just ask good directions, and I can normally figure it out. And the biggest challenge of the entire trip is how to figure out the thermostat, because hotel thermostats, right? They're all like touchscreen nowadays. I have to FaceTime my husband to have him look at the thermostat for me. But that's the biggest challenge, because I'm always cold. I've become like my mother. I'm always cold. If I were to leave my house that day, when I went to Japan and I got off the subway, and the subway was not where I expected. I thought I'd be getting off right into the airport, and I was not in the airport. And I just was surrounded by people who didn't speak English, and I was like, I have got to just chunk this, because I have no idea how I'm going to find the airport now. And I chunked it, and I found a guy from Singapore, and he was awesome, and he showed me how to get there, and it all worked out. I'm here. I've never been permanently lost. So the point is, in life, there can be big things you want to take on, and we should. We should think big, and we should have really ambitious goals in our lives. Or simple goals, whatever your goals are. But sometimes we stop moving forward because it feels so overwhelming. If we can just chunk it and know, one of my favorite scriptures was Matthew 6:34, give no thought for the morrow, for today's evil is sufficient unto itself. I kind of paraphrase that. But bottom line, there's enough to worry about today. Do your very best today. Work hard, excel, focus, deliver. Do what you need to do today, and the next step will be revealed to you. Just like walking through uncertainty, you'll take the next step, and the next step will open up. In this life, we want plans, and we want certainty, and we want forecasts, and we want perfection economic models, and blah, blah, blah. Life is uncertain. We don't want to face that reality. It is. Things will happen we don't expect. The question is learning to move through it, to chunk it, to have teams, to know that you're worth advocating for yourself, to get the help you need to be successful, right? To learn to be yourself, to redefine what you may perceive as a weakness, as a characteristic, an agnostic characteristic that you have a decision of what you're going to make out of it. I leave you with this last little piece. I've been really touched when I've been studying the history of the apostles. Christ lived in the middle of uncertainty, in a turbulent historical context, with Romans overseeing the Jewish culture, with Sadducees and Pharisees. And what I found so fascinating is that he brought together 12 apostles with such varied and different backgrounds. He brought Peter. He brought Andrew, his little brother, who constantly was being compared to Peter. Andrew was always called Peter, the brother of Simon Peter. I mean, his whole life, he was never just Andrew. He was Peter's brother. He had James and John, who were known as the sons of thunder. At one point, those guys even went to the Samaritans, and they weren't happy how the Samaritans agreed to Christ. And they said, Christ, hey, how about if we bring down fire upon them? Christ is like, not a good idea. But number one, you can't even bring down fire, so what are you talking about? But, like, not a good idea. So they had anger issues, like, right? They had a few anger issues. Then you had, Simon the Zealot. The Zealots back there were the militant groups that wanted to overthrow, even by force, the Roman Empire. The only people the Zealots hated more than the Romans were the tax collectors, the Jewish tax collectors, because they saw the Jewish tax collectors as surrogates for the Roman Empire, betraying their people by collecting taxes for the Roman Empire. So Christ brings on Simon the Zealot, and then guess who else he brings? Matthew the tax collector. I mean, honestly, can you imagine the diverse group he brought together for a mission? I say that because differences are okay. Embrace those in each other, have tolerance for those in each other, see the best in each other, give one another the benefit of the doubt that we're all trying our best as we muck through this life, and learn to have that same sense of grace and generosity for yourself. I believe fundamentally that this life is a miracle. It's a miracle to take advantage of, to embrace, and to find the contribution you're here to make. And I say these things with you in Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you for joining today's devotional at Ensign College. We hope today's message uplifted and inspired you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share your takeaways and favorite insights from today's devotional down in the comments. And don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Here at Ensign College, we believe God can help us grow spiritually and professionally. Whether you're looking for career-ready skills or to deepen your faith, Ensign College offers programs to help you do both. Want to learn more about the value of an education at Ensign College? Watch our video interview with President Cush and see how Ensign College can help you succeed. Make sure you like, subscribe, and join us next time for an uplifting devotional. See you soon.